Good day, and welcome to CB8 Speaks. My name is Sophia James, and I'm a member of Community Board 8, which covers the Upper East Side from 59th to 96th Street and Roosevelt Island. Tonight, we're going to visit with some of our newly appointed members of the Community Board 8. First, let's welcome our new board member with Peter Patch, our first interview with Peter Patch. Peter Patch has been a management consultant for 30+ years with a focus on marketing, business strategy, in financial services like Citibank, BNY Mellon, and Fidelity, and consumer products or services with Pepsi Budget Rent-A-Car. He is also a teacher, teaching at the college level, mostly at the CUNY School of Professional Studies, online program in business and leadership for the last several years, including Seton Hall in New Jersey and Molloy College in Rockville Center, Long Island. Peter has been very interested in effective education, preparing for a rapidly changing world, as well as the challenges, the need to strengthen our high schools, and the cost and value of college education, a major issue for students today. He also has interest in entrepreneurship, what it means to start a business. Peter believes students need to think of their own career as an asset to invest in, and where in the private or public and nonprofit sectors they will fit so they can manage their careers in an entrepreneurial way. Peter is also no stranger to community service. He has served as a Peace Corps volunteer on the Ivory Coast. He currently provides career coach training for veterans to help them transition from Iraq and Afghanistan. He serves on the board of Community Resources for Justice, a nonprofit working with ex-offenders, re-entering the community through programs created in partnership with the federal and state criminal justice system. Welcome, Peter. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Sophia. Thank you for having me.
So, tell me, why serve on the community board?
Well, that's actually a real, to me it feels like an honor and a privilege. I've only, relatively recently got involved in this particular facet of community service and activity. Mm-hmm. But I have to say I've really been impressed with both the other board members, with Jim Kleins, our president, mm-hmm. and the degree to which members of the community are very active and engaged and interested in the issues we're dealing with.
What are your particular concerns in the community now that you've joined the community board?
Well, I have some long-standing concerns. It might actually be because I was a fourth son that I was always concerned about who might get left out. Mm-hmm. And so I always sort of look to see who are the people who may be a little bit at risk. And I think that includes a lot of people in our community. It includes our seniors, mm-hmm. we need to look after them, make sure they're well served and cared for and not taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. It includes our youth in schools and education and their transition into the workforce. And I have a particular interest also in veterans, taking care of our veterans, because they've served us actually brilliantly and magnificently. Mm-hmm. It kind of takes my breath away a little bit, and I think we need to support them in their transition into their civilian careers. Absolutely,
and I commend you for taking those efforts. Now that you've served on the community board for a little while, mm-hmm. I'm curious about your first impressions or thoughts on the board and the value to community.
Well, I think, again, the thing that struck me the most, and this was from the first time I visited one of the committees or the full board hearing sessions, how really interested and engaged people are in these issues. Whether it's housing or services for seniors, they're really important issues. Street life, transportation. There's so much going on in our community. I mean, it is actually, even though it's only one of the community boards, it is not a small community. There's a lot going on, and looking at what we can do or what I can do to maybe in some small way contribute to having those things work well and serve the community well is I find it very interesting, engaging, and important.
Oh, that's very thoughtful. Is there anything else you would like to add or share with the viewers about some of your interests on the community board? Or?
Well, there are a couple things that come to mind, and I'm actually not even sure. I sort of feel like I'm, wading into the shallow end, but pretty soon I'm going to be in the deep end. Mm-hmm. I would like to see how we can engage the community sort of more actively. Mm-hmm. I remember one of the first meetings I went to was about City Bike. And I think City Bike is a very interesting program. It provides opportunities for healthful exercise and a way to get around the city. But one of the things I discovered was the community was never really consulted on whether they were interested in City Bike, as a program. And so finding ways for the community to express itself and being a vehicle to understand what the community cares about, and seeing to it that in whatever way we can, we get that to influence, how services are provided within the city seems like a very worthwhile, thing to do.
Peter, thank you so much for taking the time to interview with us today and for contributing your time and knowledge to serve the community.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you, Sophia.
Tonight, we're going to visit with our new board member, Andrew Kalloch, who grew up in the small town of Hamilton, north of Boston. His parents were public school teachers and very involved in local politics and civic life. His commitment to public service was a foundational family value and continues to be a guiding principle in his life. As a college student, he taught civics to low-income students in Boston and led a program that brought books into the homes of Head Start students. As a law student, he was a member of the Harvard Legal Aid Bureau, where he spent 25 hours a week representing victims of domestic violence in family court, as well as fought to ensure they secured the public benefits in which they were eligible. During his time with the Legal Aid Bureau, he also represented incarcerated individuals in internal prison disciplinary proceedings with the full belief that while there may be liberty for some, there must be justice for all. When Andrew first moved to New York City, while he spent some time with the NYCLU, he jumped at the chance to be a policy advisor to then Borough President Scott Stringer. Nearly 4 years later, and now the Deputy Policy Director for Comptroller Stringer, he has received a political education of the first order, diving into every possible issue in neighborhoods across the 5 boroughs. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Sophia.
I know you worked on a number of important issues while working with then Borough President Stringer. How did you first become aware of the community board?
Well, as you said, I'm something of a child of the New England town meeting, so I am used to going to places and seeing where citizens can voice their concerns about the neighborhood. So really, the community board felt like home to me. It was a place where folks could go and talk about the issues germane to what's happening in their backyard. And whether that was stop and frisk or education, transportation, or the environment, it was a place where folks could go and really be heard and talk about the issues of the day. So I was happy to be a part of it when I was working for the borough president, and I'm really happy to be a member of it now.
That's great to hear. What is your impression of the community board so far?
Well, it's a terrific crew. I mean, these are 50 folks who volunteer their time to work on behalf of their neighbors. They all have very strong opinions, like you would expect of New Yorkers, and they voice those, every week at our meetings. But they're also respectful of one another, and more importantly, they understand that it's the public who we really need to listen to. That we are there to represent the interests of our neighbors and our community writ large, and that it's not just really about us at all. It's really about us as a community.
You've joined the Transportation Committee. What drew you to that committee?
Yeah, I am a bona fide transportation geek, I must admit. I have always loved the trains, the buses, the subways, the trams in our community board, and now City Bike in our community board. So I really think that transportation is one of those issues that unites all of us as New Yorkers. You might be rich, poor, everything in between, but when you're a strap hanger, you care about the trains coming on time and not being delayed because of signals or traffic ahead. So I hope to be able to improve the way transportation functions on the Upper East Side, and I hope to be able to work with my committee members to reduce congestion and to make it an easier part of people's daily lives.
Of course. And what other committees draw your interest and why?
Well, I've joined the Environment and Sanitation Committee as well. Obviously, there have been some very controversial projects in our community board area about sanitation, and I think those are very important to continue to discuss. But the environment is also something that I think is a challenge, not just here in New York City, but across the country and around the world. Actually, the day that we're taping this right now, the Pope is landing his helicopter in Lower Manhattan, and he is one of many spiritual and political leaders who have talked about the kind of need for urgent action on climate change. And we can start that right here in New York City, being an exemplar to the world about what folks need to do, not only to prepare for the changes that are coming, but to stem off some of the consequences that come from the most severe effects of climate change.
And you can definitely add some of your policy background to a lot of the committee issues and provide sort of that research background.
That's right. I hope to bring all of my strengths and unfortunately many of my weaknesses to the community board and in any way I can.
You mentioned to me that people are passionate, New Yorkers more than most, and we tend to live and breathe our neighborhoods. What issues most drive your desire to serve on the community board?
Well, I do think we live and breathe our neighborhoods, and that's a great thing. I'm constantly impressed not only by what community board members understand about what's going on in their backyard and on their block, but from the public who come and make their opinions known. At the same time, you know, we don't want the community board to just have such an insular focus on our streets. We need to look beyond 59th Street and 96th Street. And the reason we need to do that is not only because folks north, south, east, and west of us are our neighbors and fellow residents of New York City, but because what happens in their neighborhood affects our neighborhood. And so whether it's making sure that every child in the city has an education that prepares them for college and career, that every individual has the opportunity to find a good paying job and have the transportation to get them from an affordable home to that job and back. You know, these are all issues that affect us as New Yorkers, and I think the community board is uniquely positioned to talk about all of them, both in our district and beyond. Excellent.
And as a person who has worked for social justice, how do you see activism and advocacy playing a role as you participate on the community board?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. One I've thought about a lot about as a so-called millennial, because we often, growing up, we would see activism as something that was in the history textbook, or something I would have to ask my mother about in terms of protesting the Vietnam War or fighting for changes for the environment or for women's rights or for these great movements that the country is engaged in. Today it's a little bit different, but I still think that activist spirit has to inform everything that we do, and I think the community board is just one way of many to do that.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
Thank you, Sophia.
I think you shared, some really good points, and welcome to the community board, and thank you for making time for CB8 Speaks.
Thank you very much.
Our next guest is Carolina Tejo. Carolina works at Voice, combining her love of the legal world to communications. Prior to joining the legal field, she received a degree in political science and economics in Miami, Florida, with a focus on international and public affairs. She was a teaching assistant lecturing on government policies, finance, and economics. She served as vice president of the Phi Alpha Delta Law Fraternity and is currently a guest speaker and student mentor for the FIU Alumni Association. Carolina's pursuit of public service came at a very early age. She was 13 years old and began volunteering as a candy striper at Miami Children's Hospital, where she volunteered all through her high school career. She also worked as a camp counselor at a ventilated assisted camp where she thought it would lead to pediatrics, but in a surprise twist, Carolina's career took a different path. She was awarded the Miami Herald Silver Knight Award, one of the nation's most highly regarded student awards programs. The award program recognizes outstanding students who have not only maintained good grades, but have also unselfishly applied their special knowledge and talents to contribute significant service to their schools and communities. Welcome. Thank you for joining us, Carolina.
Thank you for having me, Sophia.
Carolina, when did you first become aware of the community board? Were there some issue that brought you to the board meetings?
About 18 months ago, I became a full-fledged New Yorker. After 5 years of splitting my time before New York and Miami. Once settled, I thought that one of my big sort of passions has always been community service, being involved in the community. And just a really quick search landed me on Ben Kalloch's website, which led me to some discussions he'd held over at our community board. So I started attending community boards, sitting in the audience, thought it was such a lively discussion. So about this past year, threw my hat sort of in the ring and ended up on the community board. And I thought that it was a really great place to sort of hone your skills, and it seemed that everybody was really passionate about what was going on in the community. So it was a perfect fit.
which committees have interested you so far?
Through my legal and PR background, communications has always been sort of a passion. But the latest thing that I've really enjoyed working on has been landmarks and our zoning sort of committees. I've had the pleasure this past fall, brought to us by our Manhattan president, Gayle Baron, who's had the leadership development trainings. So we've all gathered, and it's been a lot of a learning curve of sorts, but we've gone over how landmarks and zoning laws work. And I think some of the most interesting parts have been how all these laws are probably going to change in the next decade or so. And being part of the community board is a big experience, sort of how we are part of shaping these laws.
Are there any specific goals you would like to achieve during your service as a member of the community board?
Yes. So as a young woman joining the community board, I think that it's a really great way to contribute proactively to strengthening the younger members of the community to get involved. It seems like we're lacking in young members, and I was happy to sort of take that role and perhaps hone in on these skills and have younger people in the community join groups and let their voice be heard, perhaps through somebody else who feels the same way they do. And I've also learned just leadership skills and making teams more productive and more effective. And it's been a really great way to sort of strategize, especially when we have deadlines. And a lot of times we're faced with really confidential and sensitive sort of topics that come through the community board. And it's a good way for us all to come together.
So it's only been several months now.
Yes.
What are your first impressions? Well, not even first impressions. What are your impressions now of the community board?
Well, first, we're a terrific group. I would say that we're probably the best community board in Manhattan.
Ah.
So all the other community boards have nothing on ours. We're a fun bunch. We have lawyers and doctors and consultants and teachers. We even have a couple of students. So it's always a really great mix, and we have some much animated banter when there's some hot topics on the table. And I think the best part is that no matter the career path that we've taken, I think we're all really passionate about something, and we really stand for it when we have our board meetings.
In your point of view, what value comes from participating on the community board?
Well, the community board serves as a platform for residents to voice their concerns and discuss issues that concern the community. And so working in high-paced environments really just has brought all forth sort of a keen sense of impeccable attention to detail. And it's been a true pleasure to sort of serve in this community board because we've been able to liaise between government officials, community officials, and the community, which is who the board members represent in its entirety. We are their voice, so it's important for us to be in the know, and so these are the values that we are bringing to the table.
Is there anything else you would like to add or share that I didn't ask you about before?
No, I think I'm really excited to continue in this position and bring forth as many young people in the community to sort of be public members and sit in our meetings, because I think they would be really impressed with the work that Community Board 8 has done.
Thank you so much, Carolina, for taking
Sophia.
the time.
Thank you for having me.
No, absolutely, and for dedicating your time to serve the community. We appreciate it.
It's really my pleasure. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. This has been Get to Know Your Community Board. Thank you for joining us today. Keep an eye out for our interview series with community board members. If you're passionate about serving your community, I highly encourage you to join the next community board meeting.
Oh, thank you for having me. That was great.
Hi, I'm Scott Falk. I'm First Vice Chair of Community Board 8, and our next guest is one of our new members, Gayle Baron. Gayle now consults for small businesses and nonprofits after spending several years running the Long Island City Partnership and a few decades at the Port Authority. So, Gayle, why don't you tell us about how your time at the Port Authority and at the Long Island City Partnership really qualified you for serving on the community board and seeing how you could serve the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island.
Oh, it will be my pleasure to do so, Scott. I began my career at the Port Authority at LaGuardia Airport as a management trainee, and over 3 decades there I was fortunate enough to have worked in economics, I worked in marketing, I worked in community affairs, and over the years I really had exposure to different issues that dealt with everything from quality of life to how to become fiscally responsible as an organization, as well as how to look at economic development overall throughout the bi-state region. Going on to the partnership, I began when it was the Long Island City Business Development Corporation. I eventually created a business improvement district, and within the bid, I was very pleased to have worked on a framework for the rezoning of the central core of all of Long Island City, which ultimately led to the amazing development that is underway right now. And it was fortunate that throughout the Port Authority years, I learned how to read blueprints. I understood zoning and land use issues, and as such, working with public and private sector folks, we were able to secure $80 million to create the capital improvements, which you see now along Jackson Avenue and along Queens Plaza, particularly evident when you come across the Queensboro Bridge. And you can see you now have plantings, we have a pocket park. We were able to bring in a whole cross-section of different types of companies ranging from MetLife to JetBlue. So in looking back at my career, I'm very pleased with what I learned, and I think that those skills and that type of knowledge, now that I have more time than I have in the past, will really help so that I can contribute as a member of Community Board 8.
How long have you lived in this neighborhood?
45 years.
Excellent. So tell me if there are certain issues or certain projects that you're particularly interested in within this district.
Well, I'm particularly drawn to serve on the Small Business Committee. What's happening now with the 2nd Avenue subway development, so many of these mom and pop stores have had to close because their rents have just escalated. Property owners are looking at these various small businesses and they're thinking, well, when the subway is operational, we can secure much higher rents, so why keep them in place? And what I'd like to be able to contribute to the overall committee agenda is what kind of incentives exist for these small businesses. How can we do our best to try to keep them afloat? And even along Madison Avenue, where you used to have several mom and pops, by the time you hit the area from 70th Street up to 96, co-ops, which own most of the buildings where the retail is located, now no longer have a cap as to what percentage of their revenue can come from retail. So you're also seeing more of the national chains and big box stores coming in rather than the mom and pops, which are basically like small businesses. They are the lifeblood of any community, in my opinion.
Besides small business, have you been appointed to any other committees at this point?
I'm also serving on landmarks. I've seen the changes in so many of these beautiful historic buildings throughout the district. And for example, if you go down Fifth Avenue, you see so many windows that are 1/1s instead of the traditional 6/6 or 8/8. And I think that I can contribute to that committee by trying to be realistic. You're going to have to deal with change because change is inevitable, but how do you create a balance so that you're able to really keep the neighborhood intact as compared to just changing so radically? And what I'd love to do, if I can find some more time, is serve on the Parks Committee, because I feel that we have so little green space throughout the district. So I'm looking to see if I can possibly make those meetings as well.
Excellent. So we've talked about some things where you're looking to preserve some of the characteristics of the neighborhood and preserve some of the landmarks, preserve some of the small businesses. What are some things that you might like to see change in our district?
Well, as far as change goes, I think that what I'd like to see is, sometimes I think that there is a divide at Lexington Avenue where it's always assumed that folks who live west of Lexington don't have the same issues as those that live east of Lex. And I think being able to kind of consensus build so that we understand that we really all have the same issues. There are folks who live in the Carnegie Hill neighborhood who find that the cost of living there escalates and have to move out of a district, just the same as that problem exists on York and First Avenue. Sometimes I think that it's like two different neighborhoods, and what I'd love to see would be more interaction so that people who live in one part of the district kind of look at the rest of the district as being part of a whole, not with separate issues or separate problems.
Excellent. So I understand that you worked on the anniversary of the Queensboro Bridge. So can you tell me about how you helped partner with people from the Upper East Side when you were representing the Long Island City Partnership to commemorate that occasion?
It's interesting because when I went to my first orientation session for Community Board 8, I was so surprised to see Judy Schneider there because she and her husband Barry had co-chaired the Centennial. And what we did is we worked with a lot of the small businesses in Long Island City to get them involved, to have them have special centennial types of meals and do whatever they could, even with small donations, to make sure that the celebration would be one that everybody would be proud of. We worked with the local transportation officials, with sanitation, everyone who is part of that community to be able to look at the bridge, which is just absolutely spectacular, and realize that it was 100 years old and we really wanted to celebrate it in a great way. And Judy and Barry did a marvelous job. And it was almost, and we also worked with the East Midtown Business Improvement District so that our Business Improvement District could end up having certain programs on the Queens side of the bridge, and their bid would have programs on the Manhattan side. So it was really a great celebration.
Well, thank you very much for bringing all of your experience and expertise to our board, and I look forward to working with you in the years ahead.
Thank you so much, Scott. I look forward to working with you as well and attending some of your transportation committee meetings, because I know you do good work there.